Uh, so, nursing care in palliative care is a very important aspect, and there are many nursing issues which has to be managed properly so that we can improve the quality of life of patients and families. So, Shiba is a nurse, and she has been working in palliative care for more than 20 years, and she has extensive experience in palliative care in various institutions. And presently, she is working as the training coordinator at Pallium India. Uh, so, Shiba will talk about various nursing issues, and it's over to you, Shiba.
Thank you, sir. So good afternoon to all. Happy to see you all. Today, as sir said, today we are going to discuss about wound management. Uh, we all know that what is wound. Wound is an so we all know that what is wound. Is there any discontinuity of the tissues is called wound. So in you might have seen different types of wounds in your settings, but in palliative care we have seen two different types of wound. One is pressure ulcer and the another one is cancer wound. So let's see what is pressure ulcer and then move on to the cancer wound or a fungating ulcer. So what is pressure ulcer? So there are three main causes of pressure ulcer. One is pressure, the second one is friction, the third one is moisture. These are the three major causes of pressure ulcer. So pressure ulcer is a localized injury to the skin and other underlying tissues, usually over the bony prominence as a result of prolonged unrelieved pressure. If there is an unrelieved prolonged pressure there is a chance of the pressure occur in the bony prominence, especially on the bony prominence. So that's called pressure ulcer. So let's see what is the pathophysiology. So when a patient lying in a bed, you can just imagine, you can see that picture. So pressure for a long time. So what happens if the patient is lying on a bed for a long time? There is because of their body weight can compress the blood vessels. So if the blood vessels compress the tissues compress together, the tissues not getting adequate blood supply. Okay, so if the collapse of blood vessels happen, that leads to the tissues not getting adequate nutrition and oxygen. That leads to tissue hypoxia and stress breakdown. This is the pathophysiology of pressure ulcer. So we need to change the position 2 to 3 hours early. So that's why I am telling that pathophysiology is we need to tell the caregivers the importance of changing the position. So this is the pathophysiology of how the pressure sore will come. So let's see what are the risk factors. So the first one is friction. For a bed-bound patients, we usually we need to change the sheets, especially change the sheets daily. So when we change the sheets, what happened? So usually the caregiver, they doesn't know how to change the sheets for a bed-bound patients. So usually they pull the sheets under the patient. So there is a chance of frictions between the sheets and the skin. So if there is any friction there, that skin will the skin layer will be damaged. There is a chance of pressures of formation. And the second one is shear. Shear means for an obese patients, usually there is a chance of slipping downwards. So when we reback to their normal position, what happened? So we need more people to move the patient from downwards to upwards. So there is a chance. Usually we apply more pressure on their body. So there is a chance of that breakdown of the tissues. So if you put the patient in the same position, we don't know whether there is a damage of the skin is happened, the underlying tissues is happened or not. So if you put the patient in the same position, there is a chance of development of pressure ulcer. And impaired sensory perceptions. We know, so that paraplegic patients, they are not able to sense the lower part of the body. They may get the pressure so easily. So that group of patients is one of the risk factors. And impaired physical mobility, they are not move independently, and altered level of consciousness, fecal and urinary incontinence. I already said there is a three major cause. There's one of the cause is moisture. So if there is a fecal and urinary incontinence there is the chance of moisture. So that can cause pressure ulcer. And the malnutrition. So even if you change the position 2 to 3 hours, even the patients develop pressure ulcer, maybe because of malnutrition. If the lack of protein intake in their diet can cause malnutrition. And dehydration. So if there is any dehydration there is a chance of lack of blood volume. If there is a lack of blood volume there, the tissues may not get adequate blood supply. So there is a chance of the pressures of formation. And excessive body heat, advanced stage. These are the risk factors of pressure ulcer formation. So let's see what are the common sites. So it can occur anywhere. So depends on the patient position, it can occur. So you can imagine even if the patient is in supine position or side-lying position, Fowler's position, or even if the patient is in wheelchair also, the patients can get pressure ulcer. So you can see some images of pressure ulcer. So heels, occiput, scapular regions, toes, sacral region, all the different sites. So it depends on the patient's position, it can affect. So we need to change the position 2 to 3 hourly. So we can see some of the important pressure points. So if the patient is in supine position, occiput, elbow, sacral region, heels, and scapula. So these are the important pressure points. So why I am telling these important pressure points is we need to change the position 2 to 3 hourly. So when we change the position from supine position to side-lying position, so we can give a special attention to the most important, that bony prominence. If there is any color change there, we can give further, you can prevent further pressure on that area. Okay, so that will help to prevent damage of the skin. And even if the patient is in side-lying position, ear, acromion process, ribs, greater trochanter, medial and lateral malleolus, lateral condyles, these are the important pressure points. When the patient is lying in right lateral or left lateral position, so there is a chance of between knees, there is a chance of friction between knees. So always you can keep a small pillow or a bed sheets between the knees, so that the prevention will be reducing that that can prevent pressure ulcer formation too. So now move on to the Fowler's position. Usually we, for a dyspnea patients, we put the patients like the Fowler's position, that are more comfortable for a patient with dyspnea. So even if the patient is in the Fowler's position also can get pressure ulcer. These are the important pressure points. So at least 10-degree turn, you have to do this type of patient also. So come to the prone position. Head, elbow, chest, reproductive organs, knees and toes. So these are the important pressure points. So if the patient is having big ulcer, pressure ulcer on the sacral region, usually we put the patients like this. Even if the patient is in prone position also, these are the main pressure points. So come to the stages of wound. So there are 5 stages of wound. The first one is non-blanchable erythema. So if there is a red color there, so you can apply pressure on that area. So when we change the position from supine position to side-lying position, if you see this type of color change there in their body, so if you apply pressure on that area, that red color remains there. Okay, it's not blanching. So that is called stage 1 pressure ulcer. So management of stage 1 is you can prevent further pressure on that area. To prevent or relieve that pressure, that particular area you have to to prevent further pressure. Okay. So if you put the same position, if you put the patient in the same position, definitely the skin will damage. Now move on to the second stage. Shallow open ulcer or dermis layer will break down. Otherwise, the blister formation will be there. If the blister formation is there, definitely the skin will damage. So here we know that there is no pus formation is there, only clean wound is there. Okay, so then here the management is you can clean with normal saline. Okay, I'll tell you later how to make a homemade saline. So you can clean this type of wound with normal saline. That is enough for this type of wound. So let's see the third stage of wound, the full thickness ulcer. The third stage is full thickness ulcer, sometimes tunneling there. So tunneling is a narrow opening or passageway that can extend in any direction through soft tissue. If there is any tunneling there, when you assess the wound, you have to give a special attention for that wound. Otherwise, the wound won't heal. So you can, if the tunneling present in the wound, you can give special attention. So come to the stage 4. Exposed muscle, bone and tendon. All muscle, bone and tendon will be affecting. So management I'll tell you later. And the fifth one is unstageable. Unstageable means pressure sore is, if there is an unstageable wound, there is a black necrotic tissue on the top. You can see that image. There is a black necrotic tissue on the top of the wound. We can't assess the stage of wound. Okay, so that is called as unstageable wound. Once you remove the slough only, you have to find out whether the layers, the tissues, the affected in the subcutaneous layer or muscular layer. So when you assess it, if you have this type of features there, you have to, when you document it, you have to document it as an unstageable wound. So as I said earlier, there are 5 stages of wound. The first stage is the non-blanchable erythema. The second stage is dermal layer will be breakdown. The third stage is full thickness ulcer, that is subcutaneous layers will be affecting. And the fourth one is muscle, bone and tendon will be affecting. The fifth one is unstageable wound. So come to the assessment part. Doctors and nurses must assess the patient. I say every time when we assess the bed-bound patient, even the wheelchair patients also, you have to assess. So what are the things we need to assess? Assess the pressure points. Okay, assess the pain. If there is any pain there, you have to assess the patient. If there is any pain there, so you have to check with them whether the patient is having any pain. If the patient is having pain, you have to give some analgesics for that and wait for half an hour. After that, you have to do the dressing. Okay, and assess locations, measure the width, length and depth of the wound, stages of wound, and presence of exudate also. If there is any exudate there, so exudate means oozing out of fluid from the wound or a purulent discharge from the wound, that is exudate. You have to check for that. And assess for tunneling also. As I said earlier, you have, if the wound has any tunneling, you have to check for that. So after that, you have to document it properly. So come to the management part. So management depends on prognosis. So that means if the patient is in terminal ill or for end of life care patients, so there is a huge pressure sore there. That is sometimes we can give some pain medications and cleaning and dressing enough for that type of wound, that type of patients. Okay, so but the patient's health condition is okay. For example, for the paraplegic patient's health condition is okay. There is a lot of slough in their wound. There is fourth stage of wounds are there, or third stage is there. That management will be different. Okay, so if there is a slough there, you have to remove surgically. You can remove the slough and give special. When you remove the slough, you have to give a special attention for the granulation tissues. Okay, and after that, you have to clean with normal saline, or you can make a homemade saline. Always you have to keep the wound covered and moist. Okay. So if there is any odor or infection, so if there is any odor or infection there, add metronidazole powder. The same tablet metronidazole, you can make crushed it and make it at a powder form, and we mix with white petroleum jelly and spread it on the wound. So that will help too. That metronidazole will help to reduce the infection, and white petroleum jelly will give to the moisturizing effect to the wound. So that wound healing will fast. And charcoal. So there is the charcoal is the best agent for absorbing bad smell. You can nowadays the charcoal dressings are available, but the thing is very expensive. If the patient is affordable, you can suggest the charcoal dressings. But the patient is not affordable, you can take 1 or 2 pieces of charcoal and keep corner of the room or keep under the patient's bed. That will help to absorb the bad smell. Okay. And avoid hypochlorite solutions like povidone iodine solution and hydrogen peroxide. So if you apply the hydrogen peroxide solution like antiseptic solution to the wound, that will destroy the granulation tissues. So better you can clean with normal saline. And surgery consultation. If the patient is having any 4th stage of wound, the health condition is okay, you can refer the patient to the surgeon and find out whether the skin grafting procedure is possible or not. And negative pressure wound therapy is also another option. So how to make a homemade saline? So we usually teach the patient and family how to make a homemade saline in their home, and then dressing supplies also. Usually we give the dressing materials to the patients. If the dressing materials finished, what they will do? We have to teach some home remedies also. So how to make homemade saline? They can take 200 ml of boiled water and add 1 pinch of salt. So we all know that wounds are not, this type of wounds are not sterile. So saline is clean. So clean saline is enough to wound cleaning. And if the dressing materials are finished, they can take all the cotton sarees or dhotis, cut it into square pieces, and then that they can steam it. Half to 1 hour they can steam it, and then they can use for dressing. After cleaning with normal saline, they can apply metronidazole powder mixed with white petroleum jelly, and after that they can cover the wound with this type of dressing also. So as we all know that prevention is better than cure. So we always, if there is any bedbound patient there, we have to tell the caregivers and the patient about the importance of changing of the position. So the importance of changing position, we need to tell the caregivers. Otherwise, they don't know. If you tell you have to change the position 2 to 3 hours early, they don't know how they tell like that. So the importance you have to, otherwise the pressure sore formation will be there. That message we need to convey with them. And when we change the position, they have to inspect the pressure points and apply liquid paraffin. Okay, or any moisturizing agent. If there is any if there is no moisturizing or the agent's presence in their home, they can apply even coconut oil. Okay, so you can encourage the patient to apply any moisturizing agent for the dependent areas, and provide pressure redistribution surface like airbed or waterbed you can suggest. So one important message, if you suggest airbed or waterbed to the patient, they may think that, okay, this will take care of everything. So important message we need to convey with the patient and caregivers is, even if the patient is in waterbed or airbed, they have to change the position every 2 to 3 hours early. Okay. So, and assess the skin. So this is also very, very important. When they turn the position, if there is any color change there, they can, caregivers, you have to tell the caregivers the excellent incontinence control and to prevent further pressure on that area. So that will help to damage the skin. And maintaining a good nutrition also. As I said earlier, so lack of protein intake in their diet can cause pressure ulcer formation. So you can make sure that whether they have take any the protein intake in their diet. So there is a small tip for you as a prevention. You can keep in mind when we see this type of the pressure bed-bound patient, you can easily remember skin, double SKIN. The first S is supporting surface. So how we can give a supporting surface? Make sure your patients get pressure relief on a proper supporting surface. For example, air bed or water bed, you have to give, and you can, if the patient is in a side lying position, you can give a small pillows or a bed sheets between the knee also. And the second is the skin inspection. So every time when we turn the position, when we change the position, we have to give a special attention on the pressure point, the bony prominence, especially on the bony prominence. If there is any color change there, they can prevent further pressure. And the K is keep moving. So we need to change the position every 2 to 3 hourly. So this is very important. You have to tell the caregivers. And incontinence or moisture control. So moisture is one of the cause of pressure ulcer. So if there is any incontinence or if there is any more incontinence there, so moisture there is a chance of pressure for pressure sore formation. So if there is incontinence of urine there, if the patient is willing to put the catheter, you have to insert a Foley's catheter, and that's how we prevent moisture prevent moisture. And the another one is if there is a incontinence of bowel there, if there is a they need to change the sheets as soon as possible if there is any wet there. So and the last one is nutrition. Nutrition and maintenance of nutrition and hydration is also very, very important. If there is lack of hydration and lack of protein in their diet can cause pressure ulcer. So this is the important things we need to keep in mind while take care of bed-bound patient. So without caregiver support, we can't do anything. So engage the patient and family is very, very important. So how to involve the families and the caregivers in the patient care. So when we see this type of patients, we can develop a contractive way. Instead of usually we use you have to do like this, you have to do like this. There are the prevention, all those things we usually tell the caregivers. So instead of you have to use the we. So we can do together to prevent for what we. So when we meet the caregivers, you can tell like that. So we can do what we can. So that time, so that time they more comfortable than you. Okay, so you can always use the words we, and along with that you have to give some leaflets also. So you can make it as a their own language. We make it as a Malayalam. So every time, even if you give all the instruction through verbally, they forgot all the things. So better you can give some leaflets like this. Then they need to know how to turn the patient. How when they turn the patient, how will they need to look that. All the things they need to understand better than verbally. So come to fungating ulcer management. So can anyone say what is the major difference between pressure ulcer and the cancer wound?
Please give some responses. What is the main difference between fungating wound and cancer wound and pressure ulcer?
Pressure wounds occur mostly on the dependent areas, I think, and fungating wound can occur anywhere. And the smell as well, definitely.
Okay. Any other answers? Cancer wound will have several severe necrosis. Okay. Then
Pressure ulcer can be treated with early intervention.
Okay. Growth pattern. Okay. Okay, thank you. So pressure ulcer is prevented and is preventive and curative. Okay, if we can able to prevent the pressure ulcer and we can try to cure the pressure ulcer. So and the fungating ulcer is we can't prevent and we can't able to cure. Okay, so that is the major difference is between the pressure ulcer and the fungating ulcer. So move on to the fungating wound. It is a primary or secondary malignant growth in the skin which was ulcerated and difficult to heal. So once the cancer wound appear, it's difficult to heal. So this is the major difference between the pressure ulcer and the cancer wound. So it looks like that malignant, both ulceration and proliferative growth will take place at the same time, and it look like a nodular fungus or a cauliflower in shape. Okay. So now move on to the pathophysiology of the cancer wound. Develop a non-tender skin nodules, followed by that nodules enlarge. So that leads to, if there is a nodule enlargement there, what happened? Disruption of capillaries and lymph vessels will be there, and followed by altered coagulation and disorganized circulation. Finally, tissue hypoxia and necrosis. This is the pathophysiology of fungating ulcer. So, Marjolin ulcer is a type of malignancy of the skin. Usually, the malignant changes in a chronic wound, like the chronic wound, like burning scar or pressure ulcer, venous leg ulcer. So, sometimes it can change. Some changes in the chronic ulcer, burn scar or pressure ulcer or venous leg ulcer. So, that is the pathophysiology is different. Usually the appearance of a mass in the wound, not previously present. Okay, and followed by onset of wound pain, not previously present. The patient is experience pain when you do the dressings. The patient experience pain. So that time, along with that, there is a change in character and volume appearance of the drainage also. Okay, so that time you can take the biopsy. Better you have to refer the patient to the oncologist and find out whether the patient is developing a malignant ulcer on the chronic wound. So better you have to refer the patients. Usually that squamous cell carcinoma will be there. Now we understand that this is a non-healing ulcer. These patients need physical, psychological, social, and spiritual care. So palliative care is a total care. So you can give a physical, social, and spiritual, psychological care for this type of patient. So let's move on to the physical problems first. Pain. The first one is pain. These patients can develop two types of pain. We already know that there are two different types of pain. One is nociceptive pain and the another one is neuropathic pain. Because of the tumor compressing the blood vessels, pressing the blood vessels or nerves can cause the patient experience neuropathic pain, and direct exposure of the dermis the ulcer formation can cause the patient experience nociceptive pain also. And improper dressing changes. So dressings are adherents to the wound. So before soaking the dressings, when we remove it, there is a chance of the development of pain is there. So there are many kinds of pains the patients may experience. So when we assess it, we have to assess properly. If the patient is having the different types of pains there, you have to treat both. And come to the malodor part. So malodor is another problems. This is because of anaerobic bacterial infection. There is a devitalized necrotic tissues present in the tissues can cause the wound. It can cause malodor. And the second thing is tail exudate dressings have been more than number of days. These are the two ways the patients can develop malodor and bleeding. Bleeding is also it can occur spontaneously because of the tumor protrude the major blood vessels can cause bleeding. And the another one is improper dressing changes. As I said earlier, dressings are adherents to the wound. Before soaking the dressings, when we remove it, there is a chance of bleeding. So, and another one is itching, infestation with maggots, communication difficulties. The patients who are in head and neck cancers, usually they are not able to communicate properly. So what we have, do it here is, if the patient is able to write down their problems, we can give a piece of paper and ask them to write down their problems so that we can get an idea about their problems, even if the patient is not able to communicate their words. Okay, and come to the psychological part. We all know that there are some body image changes is there. For example, CA cheek or a head and neck cancers also. Mostly cancer buccal mucosa. There is a chance of there is a huge ulcer on their cheek. So that will affect psychologically to the patient. And sexuality is also affecting, and because of the misconception of disease and denial. Sometimes patients are not accepting the fact of the disease, so sometimes denial will be there, and fear of impending death will be there, depression, anxiety. So day by day the proliferative growth will be increasing, the size of the wound size will be increasing. So that time the patients will goes to the sometimes goes to depression, and sometimes anxiety also will be there. Finally, shame and guilty feeling also there. So come to the social part, family isolation. So this is one of the major thing. If there is a one person develop a cancer in their family, they choose a corner side room and keep the patient there, and they are not allowing to enter in the kitchen or dining area. So they always keep the patient there only. And social isolation is also there. The society, before the caregiver, the relatives, friends are used to visit this the patient, but when they develop this type of wound, nobody is willing to visit this type of patient, and nobody is willing to see this family also, because of maybe because of misconception of disease and social stigma, fear of contagion, effects on family, and some nobody is willing to get married this type of families also. So these are if there is the social problems there, the patients will be affecting emotionally also. And spiritual interference with religious rites, maybe punishment for because of my sin, the God punished me like this, that type of thinking inside their mind. So why I am telling all those problems is physical, emotional, social, and spiritual problems is, we know this wound is not curable. So we need what we can do is, we can give an attention to the wound, and we can listen their problems. At least when we listen their problems, they can feel, at least they can feel free from their emotions. Okay, so that is what we manage it here. Come to the assessment part. Wound locations. So mobility impaired. Is there any mobility impaired easily covered with a public view? This is very, very important. We can able to cover it properly. So nobody is willing to open their wound and see expose their wounds to see others. So if the patient is in head and neck cancers, especially CA patients, after the dressings, they usually take a big towel and cover it properly, and then they'll go. So when we ask them why you cover this, when if I open that wound, all of them are looking to the wound, but they feel guilt. Okay, so that is why they cover it again. They cover it properly and walk around. And wound appearance is also very, very important. Surrounding of skin, potential for complication also. If there is any usually head and neck cancers, there is a chance of protrude the major blood. There is a chance of bleeding, maybe because of the tumors will protrude the major blood vessels, sometimes bleeding is one of the reason for cause of death also. So if there is any potential for complication there, we need to prepare the family members. If there is any huge bleeding, severe bleeding in their home, what they will do, we need to prepare the family members to how to take care of that time. So come to the principles of management part. We always, our aim is to improve the quality of life of the patient and their family. How we improve the quality of life? So we can try to relieve their symptoms, reduce their symptoms. So if the patient is having pain, we can try to reduce their pain. And if there is any order or infection there, we can try to reduce their infection and managing exudate also. If there is any usually the malignant ulcer can cause lot of exudate. Okay, so we can educate the family members about how to handle the exudate management and minimize bleeding also. And now the holistic care. So holistic care is a total care. As I said earlier, total care is important for this type of patients. Empowering the patient and family in own care. We need to empower the patient and family in own care. Criteria for own dressing is, our goal of care is to maintain or improve the quality of life through symptom control, and empathetic care is always needed for this type of patients. So if the patient is able to bath, they can take a thorough bath before dressing. So what happened is, if the patient is taking thorough bath, there are a lot of necrotic tissues present in the wound. So this type of wounds are fragile. Okay, so if they are able to take bath, all the necrotic tissues will fall down. So if without applying your artery forceps pressure, all the necrotic tissues will fall down. So that is why if the patient is able to do the bath, you have to encourage the patient for same. And ensure the patient had a dose of analgesics. So make sure whether the patient is pain-free or not. If the patient is having pain, you have to give some analgesics for that. And after that, you have to do the dressing. Use normal saline for wound cleaning. As I said earlier, you have to make a homemade saline, and you have to teach the patient family for how to make a homemade saline, and they can clean the wound with the homemade saline. And select the dressings depends upon the patient's wounds size and exudate. Based on that, you have to select the dressing. So come to the physical management part, minimizing pain. So pain is one of the major problem for a cancer wound. If there is any deep pain there, you have to adjust the systemic analgesics like aching, stabbing, continuous that type of pain there. You have to adjust the systemic analgesics. That is enough to control the pain. And if there is a superficial pain like a burning, pricking type of pain there is a neuropathic pain there, your systemic analgesics may not help. So that time you can apply some local applications like Sensorcaine or Ignocaine to the wound. Wait for 8 to 10 minutes. After that, you have to do the dressing. That time the patient is pain-free. So that you can able to do the dressings properly. Come to the malodor management part. Daily cleaning and dressing is mandatory. Depends upon the wound exudate. If there is a lot of exudate there, you can change the dressings maybe 3 times a day or 2 times daily. So based on that, you have to decide. And local metronidazole. So there are, as I said earlier, you can take a same tap metronidazole, crush it and make it a powder form, and then you have to apply. And injection metronidazole also. There is a pocket formation in the this type of wound. But if there is any metronidazole injection there, you have to use after cleaning of normal saline, you have to clean with metronidazole injection also. If you use injection metronidazole, that will help to reduce the infection. Okay. And systemic antibiotics also. If there is, we understand that there is a lot of anaerobic bacterial infection and lot of necrotic tissues is also there. So you can give a systemic analgesics also, antibiotics also. So there is lack of blood supply in the superficial area, but you can try one course, that one course of antibiotics and see. Otherwise, you can apply that superficial metronidazole for that. And frequent changing of dressings depends upon the patient's own exudate and own size. No, here also no hydrogen peroxide and betadine. So these are hypochlorite solutions. These will destroy the granulation tissues, and also that will that irritate to the patient also. Come to the bleeding part. This is one of the major thing. We have to try to prevent the bleeding. As I said earlier, usually the dressings are adherents to the wound. When we remove it, we have to soak well it. Then only we have to remove it. Otherwise, there is a bleeding. Bleeding will be there. So you should. What we need to tell the caregivers is while we take care of the wound, always they have to soak well. After that, they have to remove the wound dressing. And if there is a bleeding there, they can apply local pressure and sucralfate powder also. The same sucralfate tablet, you can make it, crush it and make it a powder form, and then you can apply on the bleeding site. And tranexamic acid, and if bleeding is not controlled, you can go for systemic ethamsalate. And palliative radiotherapy also you can do. If the patient's health condition is okay, you have to refer the patient to the oncologist. And if radiotherapy take, that will help to strengthen the size of the tumor. So that can prevent the if there is any chance of the tumor protrude the major blood vessels there, it will prevent the help to strengthen the size of the tumor. So role of cancer therapy is radiotherapy and cytotoxic chemotherapy, hormone therapy. These are things that can help to strengthen the size of the tumor, and surgery also. If the patient is able to, the health condition is okay, you have to refer the patient debulking surgery. If possible, they will do the debulking surgery. Okay. So come to the maggots management. Sometimes maggots will be there. So how does maggots come? Any idea? Anybody? Okay, thank you. Flies. Also, it come from house flies. Okay, so we have to prevent this. If the patient is having this type of wound, always we need to tell the caregivers and the patients the importance of covering the wound. If there is a opening the wound, usually the infected wounds are attracted with the house flies. If they if they touch the wound, they hatch lot of eggs, result as a maggot. So prevention is better than cure. As I already said, we have to tell the caregivers and the patients to importance of covering of wound. And if they are not able to cover the wound, they can use mosquito nets. And if the maggots are there, they have to apply turpentine, not directly pour to the wound. So you can soak the turpentine with gauze piece and keep close to the wound. Okay, so that will help to all maggots will come out, so that you can take it out with the help of artery forceps. So physical removal is the only way to remove the maggots. So the important thing, message I need to convey here is, so don't follow maggots. Usually the maggots are coming out when we go with our artery forceps, they go inside. So if you go, if you follow the follow the maggots with your artery forceps, that can damage the blood vessels or that arteries. So don't follow maggots. That is the important message. When they come out, you have to take it out. And the important message, you have to tell the caregivers and the patient about the covering of the wound always. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiba. So she has covered mainly the wound care in palliative care, including fungating wounds and pressure sore management and its complications. So if you have any doubts on your practices, you can share now. Earlier in practice, use turpentine and clove oil. That's from Galaxy. Who is Galaxy M30? Galaxy M30? Sorry, that is your...
Hello.
Yes.
Hello. Yes, Dr.
Yes.
Mahesh here.
Yes,
So I did my post graduation in ENT only. So we have lot of maggots patient earlier. So for maggots we use the turpentine oil. For anesthesia the clove oil. So we use 3:1 ratio. So the effect of clove and turpentine is very good. So we can remove the maggots easily and there is no pain too.
Okay, okay. Which systemic antibiotic will we prefer for wound with infection? Anybody can answer this. Which systemic antibiotic will we prefer for wound with infection? So if the patient has foul smell, both the gram-negative and the gram-positive bacteria can, anaerobes as well as aerobes can produce foul smell. But mainly anaerobes are the reason for foul smell. So metronidazole is the antibiotic which is commonly used. It is said that if you have, if the patient has foul smell, you can give metronidazole 400 milligram TID for a week, and even then continues to have a foul smell. Then you can continue for another week and then decrease it to 200 milligram once daily and continue indefinitely. So there is a protocol developed in India, which is known as SNIF protocol, SNIFF. SNIF means SN, that is smell nil, that is smell is absent, and I for the first F for faint smell. Or not offensive, and next one, next F is for foul, that is offensive but tolerable, and the next last F is for forbidding, that is offensive and intolerable. So this is something which is developed in CMC Vellore, and they have actually published a study in BMJ with metronidazole. So it is a very useful medication which can be given systemically as well as you can apply topically, and it has the least resistance. Ship, Dr. Abir is asking, can you share the leaflet about tanning?
Yes,
I think to prevent the pressure sore.
Yes, sir. We can able to.
In the WhatsApp group or by email.
Okay.
Dr. Sunil, can you just explain about that sniff protocol? What for like?
Yeah,
is it like depending upon the smell? The dose varies. Is it like that? Or like
no, dose doesn't vary. The sniff is for the smell. SNIFF. SNI for smell nil. Okay. Then first F is for faint smell. Then next F is for foul smell. And the next is for last F is for forbidding. So according to this, the duration of the metronidazole therapy will vary. So if there is faint smell, you can use metronidazole for 400 milligram TID for 7 days, and then continue 200 milligram OD indefinitely. And if the patient has foul smell, then 400 milligram TID, and even then, if the patient has foul smell, you continue for another week, and then continue for continuous 200 milligram OD indefinitely. And if forbidding, that is very foul smelling, then first 1 week, and thereafter you can continue for another 2 weeks in the TID dose, and then continue 200 milligram dose OD indefinitely.
Thank you.
All of you will be seeing many patients with many types of wounds. So we would like to know your practices. Anybody can speak.
Hi, sir. I'm from Nepal.
Yeah.
So we have got a lot of SCI patients in our ward, and so we deal with many pressure sores, and they are mostly grade 3 or 4. But the one thing is our nursing staff are so competent that we are taking care of those sores very quite good, and like most of them we are participating the patient party as well. So like in 2 weeks sort of we teach them, and we even observe the patient party doing the dressing, and it would be like daily dressing, and then we send home, and then we follow up later. So yeah, so in SCI is quite difficult when we have pressure sores and we have to rehabilitate them. Yeah, so that's what we usually see in our hospital. And yeah, we do use metronidazole for if there is a smell, but it's mostly we use as a sprinkle when we are dressing. But if it's really bad, like the forbidding smell, we go for metronidazole for sure, but we don't go for like indefinite, or we don't continue for more than 2 weeks. By that time, the smell has already gone, so we tend to stop it. Yes, thank you.
Sunil sir, we are not able to hear you, sir. Sir, still the voice is low, sir.
How is it now?
It's better, sir.
Okay. So when the patients are at hospital, the nurses will be doing the wound care, and the caregivers may not do it at all. But once they are discharged, they will be going on, and then there will be confusion about what to do, how to do, and how to apply this medication. When to apply? Is it after cleaning or before cleaning? All types of confusion of this. So it is very important to teach the caregivers when the patients are in the hospital. So that's what we have to empower the family members to take care of the patient. This is one of the important aspects of the palliative care. So thank you, Tulsi.
True, sir. Yeah.
Anybody else? So the wound care practices varies even within the region. Even in a district, there will be many types of wound care. In case of wound care, there is wide uh, wide changes, and there are no best practices, but there are some clinical guidelines. Dr. ask Bexol dressings variety, please. Shiva, what type of dressings are used for dressing pressure sores?
Sir, we usually use the same Gamgee pad. Here we usually use the Gamgee pad, the same that the cotton and the gauze piece dressing. So there are a lot of dressings, type of dressings are available. The charcoal dressings, as I said earlier, if there is any bad smell, the foul smell there, they can use charcoal dressings. But the thing is too expensive. And some foam dressings also available, but we don't have any experience on that. We usually use Gamgee pad dressings.
What exactly is charcoal dressing actually? Is it something like commercially available or?
It's look like this.
Yeah.
Can you able to see this?
Shiva,
Yes,
unable to see properly. Can you zoom it, Rajan? Okay. Dr. Prabir, if we need not buy it from the market, actually you can make it by burning the coconut shell and using it inside the dressing, which is equally effective.
Okay, so you burn the coconut shell and then after that you can just use it.
Yeah. You can see it here, pieces of charcoal.
Okay. And it's preferred for any type of wound, like the cancer wound or bed sore, whatever it is. We prefer for any wound.
Foul smell. Any wound with foul smell. Because of this pores inside the charcoal, it can absorb large amount of gases and water producing things. But if there is exudate, it will be less effective. So if there is exudate, you have to use other dressings which can absorb large amount of exudates.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Kumari says they also do sugar or honey dressing for exfoliating wounds. Yeah, I have read about it regarding the sugar and honey. Both are used in wounds. Honey, actually medicated honey is used. Sugar is used as a paste, but we haven't used, don't have any experience. So Dr. Kumkumari, you can share your experience.
Yes, so for sugar and honey, that was advised by our plastic surgeon. So he had some experience or on it before. So in our hospital, when he came, he whatever the exudative wounds, more with like if even there's a slough or any necrotic tissue, we're gonna remove it and then also do the honey dressing, because that's really good. There's no soakage for the next day is quite dry, because the sugar and honey, I think the main role is it really absorbs any collection inside. So that's what our plastic surgeon says, and we are doing it, and it's quite good. Like it's so much good for the SCI patients here.
So do you use it in combination or separately?
No. It's either sugar or honey. Yeah, not in combination. And we don't have medicated honey. We are just using the plain honey for it. Okay. But sugar, we go for more granulated one, like big granules one. That's what we prefer to use here.
Okay. Are there any more comments?
And also one thing, because I don't know if you guys know or not, is something very new to me when I started working here. For the like contamination, in case there is a buttock, a sore, like wound pressure sores in the buttocks or near the, more sacrum region. So there's more swelling and, so for that, we are using a tegatum. It's a special dressing where your wound would not be soiled or get contaminated from the, stool or urine.
Yeah, tegatum.
Yeah, tegatum. That's what we use here for our patients.
Yeah.
After the dressing and all.
Yeah. So once it is applied, you can keep it for 2 to 3 days.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yep.
But if there is more exudate, then it will be difficult to keep it, as when this tegatum is it is beyond the capacity of the tegatum, then maybe we may not be keep it in place for 2 to 3 days. Maybe more frequent changes might be needed, but it is costly, so we don't use this type of dressing. We use maybe the gum zippers.
Okay, sure. Yep.
Okay, so I think we can move on to patient story, which will be presented by Dr. Fatima. So,
good afternoon, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, Dr.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. A warm good afternoon, one and all. I'm Dr. Zehra from Oral Medicine and Radiology Department at Malabar Dental College here in Malappuram, Kerala. Next slide, please. So this is a case of This is a case of 56-year-old male patient who was diagnosed with oral squamous cell carcinoma with respect to tongue and posterior facial pillars with a malignant ulcer intraorally. The patient's chief complaint was he was reported with a chief complaint of midline and left lateral neck swelling since 1 year, and this was the only complaint of the patient. It was associated with hoarseness of voice and difficulty in swallowing due to neck masses. No history of pain was reported. On examination, the patient was not communicating. He was accompanied by his wife. She told husband is isolated by himself for few months, and she forcefully brought him for consultation due to this swellings. On examination, cervical lymph nodes, level 2 lymph nodes were fixed, and goiter was also examined. He hesitated to speak up and open the mouth. On intraoral examination, exophytic mass was noticed with respect to left lateral border of dorsum of tongue with extension to floor of the mouth and posterior facial pillars. And on examination, there was an exophytic red and white nodular growth with bleeding, and it was extending posteriorly to the posterior facial pillars and inferiorly to the floor of the mouth and mediolaterally to the alveolar ridges. And the dimension was around 3 to 5 centimeter in size with the posterior extent, which cannot be appreciated very well clinically. And there was it was also associated with an ulceration in the left lateral border of the tongue with a ill-defined, irregular, and it was having an elevated margin and indurated border also. And the floor was surrounded, covered with a yellowish slough, and it was also intermixed with blood. And the ulcer is of around 2 to 2.5 centimeter in size. And on palpation, there was profuse bleeding even on mild provocation, and it was completely non-tender growth, and paresthesia was also noticed in that case. And there was poor oral hygiene, profuse bleeding on provocation was there, and there was offensive malodor also. And previous slide, please. Okay, and one thing which was noticing was the patient never gives a history of pain for the past 2 years once he notices this growth. And he told that like he was having a history of habit, deleterious habit of using smokeless as well as smoking tobacco along with alcohol for more than 20 years. And he quit the
Dr. Fatima?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Okay, can I continue?
Yes, you can.
Okay, the psychosocial aspect of this patient is he is a farmer and he's having 2 girl child studying in high school. Wife is going for daily wage household work, and they are basically from Thrissur. And embarrassment, guilty feeling lead to social isolation and even family isolation by himself. Financial insecurity and anxiety on how he is going to treat this growth was there. And without consultation, he was judging the lesion for past 2 years, and he considered it as a cancerous growth and at early time itself by himself. And there was a fear to face the consequence with this, and there was offensive malodor and bleeding, and this lead to restriction of his diet to fluid intake as well as complete family isolation was also there. So the main concern of the patient was actually the fear of negligence from the family once they figure out that the malignant ulcer is due to his deleterious habit. And there was social isolation also. And he's least bothered of the ulcer because he was used to its presence for around 1 to 2 years. So it is a case of 56-year-old patient with a malignant ulcer intraorally. So the discussion points are, I need to know how is the initial management of the patient. Actually, for this case, what they have done in general surgery department was they recall the patient 2 days after in order to do an incisional biopsy, and they did the biopsy, and it was found to be an oral squamous cell carcinoma, and they refer the patient to the oncology department. But I doubt whether this is the actual way or the propaganda to deal with the cases like this, because the patient was having severe bleeding, malodor, and the patient and there was a doubt why the patient is not having a history of pain for last 2 years, and the psychological status of the patient, like whether the patient is under depression, and if yes, what is the management for that case, and the social isolation, shame, rejection, fear, and anxiety, all was there, and the financial issues were there, and the most and important thing, his insecurity about his family status was also there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sarah. So we have a patient who is 56-year-old with intraoral malignancy. And Dr. Sarah is asking whether the initial management was correct. So are there any or surgeons or ENT? Yeah, so, Dr. Dinesh, not Dinesh, who is that? Mahesh. Anybody? Sorry, Dr. Gawa, you are muted. Can unmute and speak. Rajlakshmi, can you unmute him?
Yes, sir. Dr. Mahesh.
No, Dr. Gawa, he was trying to speak.
Dr. Gaur, were you asking something, sir?
No, ma'am. Basically, you are not audible. Actually,
Okay, sir.
there was some internet problem over here. That's why. Thank you.
So, Dr. Mahesh, are you still there?
Yes. I'm there. Can you repeat the
Yeah.
what you are asking?
No, Dr. Sarah was asking whether the initial management was correct, because the patient had bleeding and pulse well, and from the general surgery that it that took a biopsy and referred to oncology. So, was that correct? What's your opinion? Mahesh, Dr. Mahesh, you are not audible.
Sir, I think he's traveling.
Yeah. Anybody else want to speak?
So the initial management, so this is Dr. Gautam, sir.
Yes, Dr. Gautam.
So the initial management of the patient is, as our presenter is from dental department, the initial management of the patient, whatever they have done is okay, sir. The surgical, general surgery, general surgeons have seen the patient, they have done a biopsy. And what about the next workup, sir? Whether it is just confined to oral, and by the time it is 2 years now, probably there should have been some metastasis, and I was not able to concentrate on whether this patient now, how is this built, whether he is really cachetic, whether he is emaciated. I have understood that he is not taking intake for kneeling for last few months. Otherwise, was there any chances that he could have gone for any major resection and bone graft, like all those things would have been tried with this case, sir? What is the next workup? What is the oncology doctors, what they have told, and what about surgical oncology? What about uh, the other aspects? Well, whether he could
Sir,
have tried with. Yes, madam.
Sir, actually, this was a case I met 2 years back when I was doing my post graduation time. At that time, I was posted in general surgery department, and only 2 days I met this patient. One on this first OP day, and second for his this biopsy day. I actually didn't have a follow up with this case.
Yes, madam. So only I was telling, as you are from dental department, what happened next was the question. Whether this cancer was just
Sir,
confined to
but
the oral
my
cavity.
doubt is actually, sir, whether this is the right way, like without treating the bleeding, profuse bleeding and malodor, to make a patient comfort, to know the comfort level of patient without knowing the comfort level of patient, whether this is the right way of uh, treating the patient. That is what I have a doubt.
Madam, according to me, actually, uh, yes, what you have asked is correct. Probably for bleeding, they could have given some tranexamic acid IV. We don't know what exactly they have done, and what oncology. See, the general surgery people, they have seen him and they have referred to oncology. Oncology, they should have started to treat him symptomatically initially, along with the workup. So that part was not, madam, your case presentation was excellent. It was brief. But from medical point of view, what is the next management? What they would have done is probably treating the bleeding and arresting the bleeding they should have done. And management part, how is his hemoglobin, how is his platelets, we don't know. So what is his bleeding parameters, coagulation parameters, they would have seen that, and they would have seen the cause of bleeding. They should have seen the cause of bleeding. The cause of bleeding is, of course, the malignancy. What about the coagulation parameters, whether it is correctable? The palliative care is whether we can correct it without doing harm to the patient is the main thing. What are all the correctable factors, we can correct it. This is my view, madam. Sunil sir, anything else?
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Gautam. I think it is important to have a diagnosis, but at the same time, we have to keep the patient comfortable as much as possible. So,
Dr. Sunil, there is a background noise.
okay. Is it okay?
Hello.
Is it okay now?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I was telling that having a diagnosis is important, but keeping the patient as comfortable as possible is also our main aim of treatment. So, if the patient has anxiety or worries regarding the bleeding, and if it is profuse, definitely we have to do something for the profuse bleeding. And foul smell, because of the foul smell, there are many problems which Shiva has mentioned in her podcast. So it is also important to manage the malodor. So that's and then taking maybe with this treatment, that is hemostatic as well as managing the malodor, we have to do biopsy to find out what is the cause of this ulcer. And then proceed as sending to an oncologist, and then in the tumor board meeting, they will be deciding how to go about this.
Okay, sir.
Why this patient didn't have pain for the past 2 years? Anybody can answer this?
Hello. Hello, Dr. Mahesh here.
Yes, Dr.
Mahesh. Probably the buccal mucosa growth is verrucous. The verrucous growth are very slow glowing tumors, and they are more or less superficial. If it is in initial stage or 1 or 2 or 3 for a year, so in some cases the verrucous growth may remain 9 years silent or 7 year 8 year silence. So if it is a verrucous growth, definitely the pain is less or is very superficially, even it does not cross the buccinator muscle. Okay. And the other thing about the bleeding, I was in traveling, so bleeding point of view that first we have to stop the mechanical part, then pharmacological, that pressure and the injectable like tranexamic acid and everything, botroclot or something. So if it is very profuse bleeding, then better to stop with uh, the ligation of the external carotid or a particular branch which is like facial or something. So we can stop. If it is a treatable one, then we have to treat the wide excision of the tumor along with the ligation of the vessel. This is the proper treatment. At the same time, we can do the reconstruction too.
Okay, thank you. And if you talk generally about cancers, it is said that only in 75% of patients cancer produces pain. Plus 25% will not have pain. So cancer cannot be equated with pain. So 25% of patients will not have pain. And Dr. Mahesh gave another explanation.
Initial stage like in buccal mucosa or LGBS, there is very less pain, but in tongue, definitely some of the very excruciating pain with the refer to the ear too. So tongue cancer, they come with the GB, that these cancers are very uncommonly present with initial pain symptoms.
Okay, thank you. So, psychological status of the patient, whether patient is under depression and if yes, none. Okay. So, how do you assess the patient for depression? Anybody?
Hello, sir. I'm Dr.
Yeah.
Starlin.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we usually do is we talk to the relatives and ask whether the daily functioning of the patient is different compared to his earlier functioning, which seems to be so. But, we have to find out whether he's going to work. And definitely there are some aspects of social isolation and things which point towards depression. But we have to ask specifics about sleep, appetite, his irritability or crying spells, and his wishes for death and things like that, which might be discussed with the wife. So based on these aspects, we can say whether he is depressed for some period of time or not.
Dr. Sunil, you're muted, sir.
Okay. So, in addition to what Dr. Starlin told, we have other features like hopelessness, helplessness, worthlessness, and idea for suicide. So, along with constant low mood and loss of sleep, loss of appetite, all this can also be part of depression. But if you diagnose major depression, then you have to treat with medications along with other counseling and psychotherapy. So usually selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors like citalopram and escitalopram is used to treat depression. Maybe escitalopram is the most commonly used medication. Start with 5 milligram OD and then maybe you can increase it to for 10 milligram. And some patients may also require benzodiazepines like clonazepam for the first few weeks, and then reduce and stop clonazepam, but continue with escitalopram or other SSRIs. Yeah, how do you address other issues like financial problems and how to take care of the family?
Sunil sir?
Yeah, anybody? So we know this patient has multiple problems, which includes all the aspects of suffering: physical, psychological, social, financial, and spiritual issues. So it is important to include other members of our team as well as the volunteers into these issues, so that they can help the patient in psychosocial and financial issues. And they will also be able to help the family. He has two girl children, and so their education is also very important. The insight of the disease and how the family is understanding uh, about the problem. As of now, family is isolating the patient, or they think that it is because of the misuse of tobacco as well as alcohol. That's true, but we have to talk to the family and make them understand that it is something which can be caused by this abuse of this uh, tobacco or alcohol. But there are many other factors which can also cause cancer like this. And they will be blaming the patient. So it is important to counsel the wife, and also a wife may be talking to the children. It is because your father had used these things that caused cancer. So that type of conversation cannot be encouraged. So it is important to have meeting with the wife and make her understand regarding the disease, and also its effect on the patient. If she says, okay, it is because of your fault, you only caused this, then that will again going to aggravate the psychological problem of the patient, which in turn can affect the family life. So communication with the wife is very, very important. Anybody has any comments? Anybody? Dr. Sarah?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any more comments or questions?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I understood, sir. Actually, communication is the main thing because here itself, here in Malappuram, sir, actually, there are many palliative sectors and volunteers who are ready to initiate and to follow up these type of cases. But the main thing is patient itself hesitate to communicate these things with the outsiders because of he is feeling guilty with his disease.
So that is what we have to address first. Actually, we even need to tell him that the use of tobacco and alcohol is only one of the reasons. But there are many other factors which we don't know also cause cancer.
Sure, sir. Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sarah, and thank you all for your active participation, and thank you, Shiva, for presenting wound management, and it was a good talk. So thank you all, and we'll see you on next Tuesday. Next Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all. We'll see you next Wednesday with a topic on psychosocial issues.